Hello everyone and welcome to Xero User Hour Live. My name is Jeri Murphy and I'm here to bring you the first Xero User Hour that is happening live here on the web. And we're going to actually be showing you through the tutorials that we have prepared for you based on how to delete things inside Xero. So would you believe that the most Googled thing when you type in Xero how to, it comes up with how to delete a bank account. So that gave me an idea. I thought we would get online here and I would show you exactly how to delete a whole number of things inside Xero. Now, you may have joined us on Xero User Hour on Twitter over the past few months. We had, if you go to Twitter and look up the hashtag Xero User Hour, you'll find the different discussions and things that we've been having about Xero User Hour and about Xero through that Xero User Hour, 1 p.m. every Wednesday, Sydney time, and 1 p.m. every Wednesday London time. So we have one running in Sydney for the Australian and New Zealand Xero users, and we have one running in the UK for the users in the UK and in the rest of the world that fit in that time zone. So over time, we realized that 140 characters on Twitter wasn't really enough for us to really get out the content that we have for you on Xero that we want to share. Xero User Magazine is the host of this event, of Xero User Hour, and the creator of Xero User Hour. And at Xero User Magazine, and XU Magazine, we are all about ensuring that we get great content out to the Xero users, be it advisors or business owners or business users. Anyone that's using Xero should be able to come to Xero User Magazine and for free get the information that they need to be able to use Xero to its greatest potential. At Xero User Magazine, we also focus on sharing the Xero tutorials, but as well information about the add-ons that connect to Xero, about new add-ons that connect to Xero, about the comparing different add-ons and how they differ between the different add-ons that exist that connect to Xero, and stories for you from add-on founders and all sorts of things. So whilst everybody's just logging in and getting started, let's go through a little bit of housekeeping. So you should be able to see on the screen at the moment, you should be able to have see the video of myself. And I've just put up a screenshot of the Xero User Magazine here. It's a Xero User Hour page from the XU Magazine website. So you can see that screen there. I'm going to flick now to my Xero page and you'll see my Xero page here. I know on your screen you're going to see a 3D version where it's on a bit of a side. That's just so you can say hi and get used to seeing me and know who you're talking to. I'll turn the video off in a moment and we'll just go to full screen. But you should be able to see my screen that says that has a Xero demo company on it, and we'll come back to that. We'll drill down into that in a moment when you get into the tutorial time. Now, the other thing that you need to know housekeeping-wise is that there will be a delay because we've got the live stream happening. The chat, that when you type in something in the chat, is instant. So in your live stream page, when you've logged in, you should be able to see, it's a free login obviously, when you log in to livestream.com and come directly to this event, you'll see a chat box on the right-hand side of the video that you're watching. When you write a chat in there, that comes through instantly to me. So I have it open on this screen here, and I have the tutorial open on this screen over here. And on the chat box, it comes through instantly to me. But what you hear and what you see is actually about a 20 to 30 second delay. So when you ask a question, it's likely that I am answering the question, but you will see it shortly after you've asked the question. Either way, if you type a question into the panel, I will answer it for you. And it doesn't just have to be about the topic that I'm talking about today. You can have the topic, you can ask any question that you want about Xero, where I'm here to give you all your questions all your answers to the questions that you have about Xero. That's what Xero User Hour is all about. But I do want to also share with you some other information, first of all, just to get everybody warmed up, to show you something new that you may not have known to even ask for. All right, so if you have any questions about Xero, about the topic today, enter it into the chat panel. If not, just say hi, let me know where you're joining from today. Either way, I'm going to get into the tutorial now. Hopefully you can all see it fine and also hear me fine. All right, so I'm just going to switch to full screen now. Excellent. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see that a little bit clearer. Hopefully you can all see my demo company. Now, as I said today, when I was preparing for this session and wondering what I was going to talk about, I thought, well, let's go through and Google and think what is the most Googled thing that people want to know how to do in Xero. And it happened to be how to delete a bank account. So I thought, let's first of all show that. That doesn't take half an hour or an hour. It only takes a few minutes to show you how to delete a bank account. But I'm going to take you through that process. Then I'm going to take you through how to delete a number of other things. I'm going to show you how to delete an invoice, a bill, how to find those deleted invoices and bills, how to delete things when they're in a locked period, or what to do if you don't even know what a locked period is. I'm going to take you through that, and also have a look at some of the things we can't delete. So anything, comments that you have, any questions that you might have about this whole process, feel free to put them in the chat panel. All right, let's go. First of all, I want to take you through how to delete a bank account. As I said, this is the most Googled how-to thing in Xero. And it's not how you expect that it would actually be, how you're going to delete it. So that's obviously why people have gone and tried to look for it. So you'd think that when you're going to delete a bank account, you would think that you can go to Manage Account and Edit Account Details. And when you come into Manage Account, Edit Account Details, here are all of the account details for a bank account, but you can't delete it. So you've probably gone there if you tried to do it. The other place you might go looking is under Accounts, there is Bank Accounts. Under Bank Accounts, we have a list of all of our bank accounts here. And you will see here that there isn't a way to delete a bank account. Of course, we've got the same Manage Account button, but there's no further options under there. We can see how to add an account and also how to move those accounts around on the dashboard. If I wanted to put this account up here on the dashboard, I can click up. If I don't want to show an account at all, then you might untick it here. We'll come back to this in a minute when we're talking about editing and changing accounts. Well, actually, no, let's just cover it now. Deleting a bank account is something that you may want to do, especially when you've just never used it before. If you've just added the account and you want to delete it because it just shouldn't be there. When you delete that bank account, of course, you are taking it out of the system. It mustn't have any transactions in it. You just delete those transactions. If you try to delete an account with transactions in it, it's just going to archive it. You'll see that in a minute. But if you delete the account, you can only delete it the way I'm going to show you if it has absolutely nothing in it at all. Otherwise, if you try and delete an account that has transactions, it's going to archive it. Either way, it'll get it off the dashboard. But sometimes you might just not be using an account anymore. You don't want it to show on the dashboard, but you do still want to have it in your accounts. Maybe it's something that you have to come back to later, or that you want to leave because you want to check with your accountant. You just don't want to see it anymore. So probably a key sort of prelude to deleting an account, if you just don't want to see it anymore because it doesn't need to be there, then you can come into this bank accounts area and you can untick show account on dashboard, and then it's not going to show on the dashboard anymore. So that's just a little tip on how you can hide those accounts off the dashboard if you don't want them, but if you don't want to delete them. All right, so how do we actually delete an account? Well, you do it by going to Settings and then General Settings. When you go to General Settings, you can select Chart of Accounts. The reason why I took you there and not straight to Chart of Accounts here is because sometimes people may not have Chart of Accounts here as a favorites. It is there by default, but if it isn't there for you for some reason, you will find Chart of Accounts under General Settings, which is where we're going. Just waiting for Xero to get there for me. It's thinking about it. Okay, well, while I'm waiting for Xero to catch up with me, where I'm going to take you now is take you into the Chart of Accounts area. And the way that we delete an account is to go into Chart of Accounts, tick the account, select it, and then we can select Delete or Archive. All right, there we go. Just a comment that's come up in the chat panel as we're going. Someone saying they're trouble hearing the sound or getting the video to load. Just one of the things that you can do if you don't have too good an internet connection at your end, potentially, I don't know your example, your circumstance, but what you can do is diminish the quality of the video slightly by using the quality button on the video screen. So down next to the full screen button, you can select for a lesser quality if you want to, if it's not coming through well on HD. All right, so hopefully everything is okay there at your end. I shall keep an eye on the comments to see if there's anything else. I'm not sure what else I can do from my end. All right, let me just have a look and check that we have some. I do have the sound turned on here at this end, so I don't think it's the sound from my end, but I'm just going to persevere and see what I can do. I'm not sure how else to improve that. I've tested it yesterday with someone else and it was working fine, and they were on the other side of the world. So I'll just continue, and I'm not sure how else to help with this, but I will take note of your details so I can contact you after if I have any other tips of how to improve your auto quality and your video. All right, so for those of you that were having a look there, we were up to adding in the chart, going to the chart of accounts so we can delete the bank account. As I said, you do have a short delay, and Xero had quite a long delay there moving to different pages. So let's go here to chart of accounts. And under chart of accounts, generally, if you have your bank accounts listed with the codes up the top, which they generally are at the top of a chart of accounts, you'll have your bank accounts listed here. If they're not at the top because the codes themselves are not at the top here, you could filter it further by going to Assets, and you'll see your accounts at the top there. And you can also do it further by selecting Type. So if I'll just show you back in all accounts, because otherwise it's by default at the top. If I select Type here, I can sort my accounts by type, and now they're sorted here by bank account. All right, so looking at the bank account here, let's just say I want to delete this business bank account. That's the one I took off my dashboard. If I tick this business bank account here and select delete up the top here, it says you've selected one account to be deleted. One account cannot be deleted, so it will be archived. This account will be removed from any context using it as a default account. So select OK. And where will we find this account? We'll find it under the archive. The reason why we'll find it under the archive is because that account had transactions in it. If the account didn't have transactions in it, we could have deleted it, but it has been used, so it is archived. If you want to restore it later at any time, you can tick it here and restore it. That's another important thing about deleting or archive accounts, just in general in Xero. If you delete an account, you can delete it if it has no transactions in it. If you try and delete an account that has transactions, it is archived, and you will always be able to find it in the archive and restore it later on if you need to. All right, so hopefully that has answered any questions that you might have had about how to delete a bank account in Xero. The next thing I want to show you is how to delete an invoice. And you might have come across this one before, but let's just go in and find one of our invoices. So for those of you that might be new to Xero, you can see how to do it. So I'm coming here into my sales invoices. I'll just select any invoice that I have. And I'll go to invoice options in the top right-hand corner. And in this case, when we're talking about invoices, bills, or credit notes, if you go to invoice options, the word Xero uses for delete is void. So I can select void, and it says, are you sure you want to void this invoice? We can select OK. Now, unlike in other accounting systems, when you void an invoice in Xero, or void a bill or credit note or something like that, you actually do still have access to that record. Voiding that invoice is simply just marking that invoice as void, and it's still available if you go and search for it. So let me show you now how you can go and find your deleted or voided as Xero calls it, voided invoices at any time. And this function is still the same if you are using bills. So let's go here to search in this top right hand corner. So I've gone to sales, I'm in my accounts sales, and I'm just going to type in my invoice. So let's say, I think it was Bayside. And here, when I look at my invoices, I can see there are no items to display because there's no other invoices with the word Bayside in it. But see here next to it, we've got show deleted and voided items. Once I do that, I can then see my invoice and I can see that it's voided. The other thing that you might want to do is you just go to your invoices. Instead of just going to the search from the main screen, you can go to all invoices. And once you've got all invoices, you can select search. And then you can select include deleted or voided invoices. So here I'll just, without even typing in Bayside, I'll just select include deleted or voided invoices. And I can also see any of the other voided invoices in my file. All right, so here is all of my invoices. I can go through all of them and try and look at the voided ones, but I can do it even quicker by pressing the status here. And of course that puts the A up the top, or I can search again and it'll put the V invoices up the top, or the ones that have the status starting with V, which is voided. And there I can see my 3 voided invoices. A question has just come through. If you have accidentally voided an invoice, can you recreate it with the same invoice number? I know you can definitely recreate it. Can you use the same invoice number? Let's test it and I'll work it out. I don't know if it was off the top of my head. So let's go and create that same invoice number. I'll make note of the invoice number here being ORC 1039. Oops, I went into it. It makes it easier for me to do it in here. So just go back a screen so I can step you through. So I've copied that invoice number and we can see that it's voided, and there's no tick boxes or anything for me to do anything in bulk. So the only way I can do anything with this invoice is to click on it. So once you click on the invoice, you can see all of the details of the invoice. You can see that it's voided. You can see exactly what it used to look like before. You can even go down into the history down the bottom, and you can see the history of exactly when it was created, who approved it, who sent it, who voided it, and all the details are down here. So the question was, if you've accidentally voided an invoice, can you recreate it with the same invoice number? Well, we can definitely recreate it. To recreate it, you go here to Invoice Options and select Copy. I'm just going to do it by selecting right click, just so I can keep this one open so I've got all the details there. So I just went Invoice Options, Copy, but instead of just hitting Copy, I did a right click and pressed Open Link in New Tab so I can see this one and the old one. And let's do a couple of things. Let's check the date. The date was the 17th of April and the 5th of May, so I'm just trying to recreate it exactly as it was. And the invoice number was ORC 1039. It was trying to put in 1040, which is the next one. So let's try and do it with 1039 and see if it'll let us. Everything else is the same, exactly as it was. Hit approve. And it says the invoice number originally assigned is no longer available and has been replaced by 1040. So it's not possible to do it with the same one. What I could suggest is, let's try and do it like this. Let's put in /1. There we go. If we put in 1039/1, it does create it. If that's too obvious a change for you, you could put like a dash between the C and the 1, for example, but you can get around it by adding a slight variance to the number, even if it's not exactly the same, but 2 will still exist. So yes, you can definitely recreate the invoice by copying it. And secondly, you can't keep the exact same invoice number, but you can have a variant of the same, such as what I've shown you here. All right. Now that is, I'm just having a look down the bottom here to see whether that invoice shows that it's been copied from 1039. It doesn't show that it's been copied from there, but it does show that I created it. So if you had that instance, you could find out who created it and why, if that was the case. All right, so that's how to delete an invoice, and we also went into how to create the invoice again if you need to. Let's just have a quick look at our bills you need to pay. And I'm going into my awaiting payment bills. And in here, we've got one of our bills. The same process can happen where we can just click on it, go to bill options, and select void. You can also do exactly the same thing that we did with the bill, copy the bill to create the invoice in doing that, exactly like we did it for the invoice. All right, the next thing that I wanted to show you was about deleting things that are in a locked period. So let me just prepare an example for you here. Let me find something that's in a locked period. All right, let's take this, we'll lock our file as of the 30th of April, which means we won't be able to go and change this invoice on the 17th of April. We'll use that same example that we just created. So first of all, what am I talking about locked periods? Locked periods means means that you've entered in a lock date in Xero that says that means that you cannot change anything in Xero before that date, but it depends on your users. So let's go and I'll have a look. You may, I've had some clients recently that didn't even know they could do it. So let me just take you through the basics. So if I go to settings, general settings, and I go to financial settings, down the bottom of the financial settings, I have these lock dates. Now, if you are not an advisor, a user with advisor access, you may not be able to change these. I'm pretty sure you can't change them even if you're a standard user. Only advisors can change these dates. So even if you go to this area, if you don't have your boxes looking like this where you can change it, it will say you need to contact your financial advisor to be able to change these dates. The concept of these dates are here because they're designed to stop you from putting inside transactions inside Xero that affect a period where you've already lodged important information. Here in Australia, let's take the example of our business activity statement. A business activity statement is generally lodged every quarter. You lodge your annual taxes every year, and you might do monthly reports every month for your, if you're an advisor, you might be preparing monthly reports for your client, or if you're the financial controller of a business, you might be preparing monthly reports to show to a board or to show to the business owner. The concept is that once you've reduced that report, once you've lodged that business activity statement, or once you've done your annual accounts and lodged them with the tax office, you don't want anyone changing anything in Xero at that after that point, because if it changes, then it's you have to go and relodge your tax return again or relodge your BAS again, when it's not very practical to do that. So what the most common thing to do is you lock your Xero file so that you can't enter transactions or can't change transactions in those periods, and you make those changes in the current period or the period which is not locked, where you haven't lodged something or you haven't prepared a report. So that's the idea behind lock dates and why we even have them. So let's use an example of when you might use these two different lock dates. It's not just one lock date like you might have seen in some systems where you say, right, from this date or on this date, no one can enter anything prior to or on this date. We've actually got two in Xero, which makes it much more flexible. So number one is stop all users except advisors making changes on or before this date. And the second one is stop all users making changes on or before this date. So the key thing is this first date locks everybody out except the advisors. This second date stops all users from making changes on or before that date. Key thing, all users, including advisors. So let's say take the BAS, for example. So what have we gone? We've just gone the March BAS period. And let's say that we've done the March BASs, and we also are looking to do, we're currently doing the annual accounts for April. And when you're going to be, your monthly accounts for April. So when you're going to do your monthly accounts, you don't want to have your your staff getting in there or the client staff getting into the Xero file and changing a bunch of things in April if you're currently preparing the monthly April accounts, because you just want to be doing your final piece and review what you review and you don't want things to change. So what you would do is you would say, I lock out all users except advisors from the 30th of April and before. But I want to make sure that no users, including the advisors, make any changes from the 31st of March. So that's a practical example that this is the BAS period. The March BAS has been lodged. You don't want anything changed. So that's the 31st of March. For the other one, you've got stopping all users except advisors. So me as an advisor, I still want to be able to change things in April, but I don't want to anyone else to be able to do that. Really only me and anyone with an advisor user level. All right, so that's how those two things work practically and how you might use it. Now, just for the example that I'm trying to show you here and relating to deleting a transaction or dealing with transactions that you need to delete that are in a locked period, how do you do that? Let me lock everybody out from the 30th of April, because otherwise I will be able to make a change because I'm an advisor. I'm not locked out from doing things, but if I put this date in here, I will be. I'll put the date as 30th of April, and that means when I go and try and delete an invoice, I won't be able to do that. All right. So let me jump into my invoice that we just copied and created before. So here's my invoice 1039/1. Open up that invoice and you'll see that it's dated the 17th of April. Now I can go to delete it, go to invoice options and go to void. Are you sure you want to void this invoice? Yes, all good so far. But then I get a big red error up the top. An error occurred for the following reason. Your accounts are locked up to 30th of April 2016. Your action must occur after this date. So what do? You're trying to delete an invoice. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be in there in the first place. How do you actually deal with this now? It's not supposed to be there. So there's two things you can do. Number one, especially if you're dealing with this on a BAS period. Number one, if you're an advisor and you know that you definitely can change this invoice and it won't affect your BAS. So for example, if you are on a cash basis and you know that when you lodge your BAS, you're only collecting GST or claiming GST on things that have already physically been paid, then you could go and change the lock dates. And you could change the lock date back to 31st of March, for example, and then you could delete this invoice. You could go void and delete it. But if you are on a GST reporting on an accruals basis, which means that you are reporting GST on the invoice date, and in this case, if I had done my BAS to 30th of April and I'd lodged my BAS, I would have this invoice. I would have put in my GST collected or paid the tax office equivalent of $21.27 GST. So if you realize later on that you had to delete this invoice because it shouldn't have been created in the first place, you don't want to just go and void it and delete it on the 17th of April, because what are you going to do? You've already paid that $21.27 to the tax office. You need to delete it and reverse it out, or delete it by reversing it out. You don't want to delete it just by deleting it, because then you've paid $21 to the tax office and you don't get it back because you're not claiming it back anytime later. You're not claiming it back in your next BAS unless you remember to do it yourself and type it in the adjustments and manually keep track of that. But a much easier way to do it is to do a credit note to reverse the invoice out in the period that isn't locked. So what is today? It's the 10th of May. So you'd be able to do that. It's actually the 11th of May. I just realized I put 10th of May on the event up the top there, but it's actually the 11th. So I'm glad that everybody else is on the right date and I'm still stuck in yesterday. So here we go. Let's go and say, well, we can't delete this invoice. We went to void. We can't delete it because the period's locked. So what can we do? Let's go to invoice options and select add credit note. By selecting add credit note, what that is doing by doing it from inside the invoice is it's creating a credit note and copying all of the details from the original invoice into the credit note. So it's got the Bayside Club, it's got all of the items, it's got the charges, exactly how it was in here already, and it's even got today's date ready for me. So it's got the date, it's got the credit note number, everything else is in there. All I need to do is hit approve. By hitting approve, I'm creating a credit note and I'm automatically applying it to the invoice 10391, so it will no longer show as an unpaid invoice anymore, because it's being reversed out. It's been fully paid in effect through this credit note by reversing the whole thing out. And guess what's also going to happen? When we lodge the May BAS, we're going to get this $21.27 back in our next BAS because we've done that. So when you do have things in a locked period, don't just go and unlock it and delete it, especially when you've got GST involved. It's always best to do a credit note. Well, it's really the easiest way to get the adjustment to happen, to show in the BAS and showing all the areas that it needs, is you do it as a credit note. You can create a credit note from scratch. If you want to, you create the credit note from scratch and enter in all these details and then allocate it to the invoice, but it's best just to do it this way. If you do it from inside the invoice, it creates it all for you in one swoop, or like I did, and you just hit approve. All right, another tip for you if you are having trouble deleting something, and maybe you can't delete something because it is in a locked period. You could, if you understand how to do journals, if you're an advisor or you have some accounting understanding and you know how to do journals, you can do a journal by going to Advisor and Manual Journals. You can then create a journal on the date that you need to create the journal in order to reallocate the expense and or the GST if you need to. I won't go into it now. I just want to remind you that, of course, if you're not dealing with an invoice or a bill or something that is easily changed, you can make the change that you need to make through journals through here. All right, finally, what I wanted to do is just take you through some of the things that you can't delete. Now, one of the key things I've noticed recently that you can't delete is inventory items. So if we go to accounts and then inventory, you will notice that when you go to the inventory items, there is no tick box to be able to delete. Oh, there is now. That wasn't there before. That wasn't there about 2 weeks ago when I was writing up an article, but now it's there. Look at that. All right, so we tick the invoice. Reframe my teaching. You can delete inventory items. Let's have a look. This one that is one that I know that's definitely been used. So if we select delete, deleting inventory items will not affect reports or historical transactions. Very good to know. So you can delete that. Now, if I delete that, obviously it hasn't deleted that item being recorded on any invoices, and I can't see it in any archived area anywhere. There's no way to restore that inventory item. Let's just have a look at another item that I know that has been used quite a lot. Let's just, for practice, just because I saw this new feature here, I'm not sure when that came out. Let's go and have a look and see mark as inactive and see what that does. All right, so all it does is change this item and select it as mark as inactive, which I assume means that you can't use it anymore when you're going to try and add in an invoice. But I'm not sure. You'd have to test that one, but I'm assuming that's what that means. Now, just as a thought, I wonder what it looks like when you export out these inventory items and whether you can make a number of inventory items inactive by default or delete them. Let's just go through and test that process, because we're here to learn and we're here to go over anything that we can to learn more about Xero. So let's do that quickly. So I'm just going to open up my inventory items spreadsheet. Just want to see if there is an inactive section. So here on I've got my inventory codes, names, inventory assets. So it doesn't look like there's any way that you can bulk update within a spreadsheet if you have lots and lots of products that you can bulk update or delete items. Because if I was just to add these items in now and import new items, they would obviously come in. Of course, one way to delete those items in bulk or mark them inactive is to select it on this screen here. So I could select all of these and do mark as inactive or delete. All right, let's just have a look here. It says tracked items with transactions cannot be deleted. So let's have a look down here. So I've ticked this one down here. So it's a tracked item. Let's see if we tick that, it can't be deleted. So you can't delete tracked items, but you can delete untracked items. Let's just see what happens. I do have stuff in stock. Let's see what happens when we mark it as inactive. All right, so I have 5 items in stock. I've marked it as inactive. That should mean that I can't create an invoice for it, but I don't believe it would do a stock adjustment or anything like that for you. So you would still have an item here that's inactive that you can't use, that you can't sell, but it would still be as 5 on hand. So I'm not sure that that's even a practical example, but to actually do a stock adjustment to make sure that you don't have any stock of that item in stock, so assuming that you're making it inactive because you have none left and you don't need to use it anymore, you would need to do a stock adjustment. So if I ever opened a client's file and they've started in making these items inactive, as you can now do, I would be looking here and seeing whether there is a quantity, and if it's grayed out here, I would make these parts active again, and then I would go into each one and do a stock adjustment to clear out that stock item in order to make sure that the balance sheet was also updated. Because right now, even though I can't sell this, it would still be showing as an item on my balance sheet as an item of stock on hand. So we've got a total value of $100 that would be showing on my balance sheet right now. So we can mark it as active in here. We can add a new adjustment. So that's something new that I learned about Xero today that hopefully you learned too. All right. Let's just have a look here. I just want to see what happened on that. Well, those deleted items, I can't find that item anymore, can I? Let's just check if we search for it. No, DevD's definitely gone. If an item's been deleted, it's deleted and it can't be activated again. So I know I was looking it up for a client recently that moved on to Deer. They were using Xero inventory and they needed some greater inventory functionality, and they were using Xero inventory, and they moved to Deer inventory. And I know that at that time you couldn't delete it because when you're using Deer inventory and Xero, the products sync. So when we created Deer inventory, we had to slightly change the product codes so that that Deer and Xero weren't using the same product codes, because then it creates havoc with the way that Xero manages inventory. So when you're using an inventory system, especially when you're moving from Xero inventory, you have your own stock on hand account, for example, on the balance sheet. You don't use Xero's inventory account. Xero's inventory system account should only be used for Xero's inventory for these items that are tracked if you're doing it on here. So I know you couldn't delete those items when we were doing that just sort of 6 to 8 weeks ago. So I can now go back to that client and let them know that you can now delete those Xero products that aren't being used anymore, and they'll stop making a mess in the Deer file because they keep resyncing every time the Deer file syncs. So very good. I'm glad to have learnt that. I learnt something today, and hopefully you have too, because I certainly didn't see the release notes about that one, and that's something I keep an eye on. Obviously not well enough these days. All right, so that was what I wanted to go through as to how to delete an inventory, what you couldn't delete. Let's have a think about some of the other things that you can and can't delete in Xero. If you have any questions, remember to type your questions in the chat box. I'm going to go through and look for some other things to show that you may or may not have known how to delete. But if there's something else that you want to ask me about Xero, if you've joined the session whilst it's been live, this session is currently about how to delete things in Xero. So as I say things, is we're going through and we've been through how to delete a bank account and how to remove an account from the dashboard. We've been through how to delete an invoice, and we even showed you how to recreate the invoice and create it with a variant of the same invoice number if you need to do that. We've also shown you what lock periods are all about and how to enter in a locked period or locked date in order to create a locked period, and why would we do that. And I've shown you how to effectively delete that transaction even when you can't delete it because it's in a voided period. I then went on to show you how to delete an inventory item, or how that you couldn't, but I found out that Xero has recently released a feature where you can now delete inventory items, and you can also mark them as inactive, which I've just shown you. So one of the other things that happens sometimes is that we want to actually delete some of those reports that we might publish. So I'm just going to show you under reports. We'll go to reports and all reports. Under all reports, if you have published reports, you can find them here under the published reports, which we don't have any in there now. So let's just go and create one so we can have one to delete or archive or do whatever we need to do. So here is we'll go back and put the BAS in March just because we can. It'll have a bit more information in it. Here's our business activity statement. For those of you that may or may not have heard, Xero now has the ability to enter in where it populates the W1 and W2 fields that it didn't used to. It used to have to manually type this information in. You can now, Xero does now do it for you. There's some setup that you need to do in your payroll settings. That's something that relates to obviously only Australian users. I won't go into it now because I'll cover that in another session. But definitely it's good to know that W1 can now be populated by Xero if you do all your setup and things correctly. If you want me to cover that in a future Xero User Hour, please let me know, and I certainly will, and I'm sure I will sometime soon. Just trying to keep it very region open at the moment, and cover off things that are in other regions as well. All right, but let's just go and publish this report. It's just a report I thought of. We can publish, so we've got a publish report in our published reports area. So here we go. Here's our reports. I've gone reports, all reports, and it's already automatically just taken me to this published area. So here I can export my report as a PDF, as an Excel document, or as a Google Doc. And if I click on activity statement here, I can scroll down the bottom and you can see that I can delete the report, archive the report, copy it and edit it, print it, or export it under those three formats that I showed you. So of course you can select delete report, and that report is now deleted. If you wanted to look at it later and you're just going through those published reports to get rid of them so that they're not there anymore, of course you would archive them and they would show up under the archived section. Alrighty. Let's go through, no questions have come up in the session. Of course, if you have any question about Xero, not just about the topic we're talking about, please enter them in the chat panel so I can answer it for you. If not, I'm going to just have another look at a couple of other things that you can delete. So let's, the ones that I had prepared, I have already gone through and explained lots of things to you. I didn't really write any more down, so I'm just going to find some for you so that you can be clear that you know how to delete all those things in Xero. So when we've already covered bank accounts, we've covered bank accounts and how you can delete a bank account. That was earlier on in this session. We've gone through how to delete invoices, credit notes, and anything else. We can also delete quotes as well. So I don't have any quotes in here. Let's just add a new quote just to double check. I'm pretty sure that there's no issue with deleting quotes or deleting purchase orders. Let's just double check though, because I know if you potentially don't know already, that you can't, there is definitely things that you can and can't do with quotes and purchase orders that you can do with invoices and bills that you may have assumed that you can do just because you can do them with invoices and bills. So a couple of things I've found out, well, not so recently, but that I do know, is that you can't import purchase orders and you can't import quotes. So of course you can import sales invoices and credit notes, but you can't import quotes. And same thing with purchase orders. You can import bills, you can import purchase credit notes, but you can't import purchase orders. You can import them indirectly, like data, and put them in directly into Xero, but you can't import them in. You can't put them in a spreadsheet template and import them in like you can with invoices and bills, etc. So looking at this quote here, just creating a quote quickly. You'll see that those items that we deleted before are no longer available. And select send. Have to find out actually whether you can send a quote. I tested this the other day, but I didn't really test it far enough, that you don't have the ability to just approve a quote. You have to send it. Now what I've been doing just by default without even be thinking about it is I've been emailing it to myself. Let's pretend that you actually just want to send a PDF copy of this, and potentially other people know this, I've just never really looked into it. If I type in my email address and press send, then of course it's going to mark that invoice as sent and it moves to that next stage. So let's just copy that invoice and just try another. Well, I don't want to copy that exact one. Let's just create another new one. I just want to test that other theory. If we add in a new quote again, I just want to see if there's any way that we can save it as sent without actually physically emailing it to anybody. So let's just create another one. So here, we can save as draft, we can save and continue editing, and we can save and add another. I don't believe there's any way that you can save it, that you can mark it as sent without going in and emailing it to yourself. Because even if you do this and you don't press send, and you don't enter in the email address and press send, it comes up and says the email field must be completed. So you have to do that. The other thing I found out the other day, which you may or may not know, is that you can upload files. Let me just upload something here. Here's a let's go this one here. Let's just upload the XU Magazine app. You can load files into your quotes, and you can include it with the quote, and you can email it. I'm pretty sure you couldn't do that a few weeks ago because that wasn't here. You had the ability to add the file. No, you could always include it with the quote. There was something else that one of my clients couldn't do that they needed to be able to do that you couldn't do in quotes because they used to do it in purchase orders. Nope, doesn't matter. Key point is, if you didn't know this already, you can upload a file. So here's the file here. And I will actually invoice it to myself and show you what it looks like in case you've never seen the online invoices links before. We're here to learn everything we can about Xero. So I've uploaded this file to here, and I've opened it and I've said include with invoice. And then we hit send. I'm certain that you couldn't do that a few weeks ago. I'm pretty sure that's what my client couldn't do because they used to do draft invoices, and then we started setting it up as quote so they could do that. Oh no, I know what it was. What the problem was a lot of their client systems, you always have been able to include your files with your online quote. However, they can't send their clients sometimes get the firewall on their emails. If you get this online quote, it's not enabling them to open that quote link because of the firewalls and things that a lot of their customers have in a lot of the organizations that they're dealing with. Now, when you go and send an invoice, an online invoice, if you haven't done that before, go to create an invoice and add a file, include it with the invoice, just like I've done here now, and then select send. You can actually tick down the bottom here, send me a copy, but you can also say include a PDF, and you can also say include the files. But you'll see when I send this to myself, I'll just open it up over here and show you in a moment. When I've sent that to myself, I'm just opening it up in my emails over here. Sorry, I didn't have them open to save on the bandwidth. So opening up in my email over here, hopefully you can see that now. You can see that it says, thank you for your inquiry, here's quote 2 for $35.20, and here's your quote. It's a quote PDF, but where's the files? The only way to get the files, I'll just show you, double check that the files aren't attached. The files aren't attached there. But if I click on this online invoice link, then I can get those files. But the problem for my client was that that's great, those files are there, and it's not that the clients weren't using that. Some clients weren't able to open the online invoice link. But when you go and send an invoice, the tick box is there for you to be able to add a copy of the files actually within the email, so it shows up within the email itself. So I thought that was something which I didn't realize until the client told me that they couldn't do that. I just assumed that it was the same as an invoice. So yes, now that's where I was I wasn't planning to go there, but I thought that was something that's very key, because I do, as you would know, I do a lot in Xero, and that's something that I thought you could do, and then I found there was no way of doing it. The only way you could get around that is to stop using quotes and start using draft invoices to record information, to record the quotes as such as draft invoices. Then you can attach the files and then you can send it. However, I advise my client against doing that because they have a number of different users, and their sales staff, their sales staff and their staff out on the road, they enter in their expense claims via the Xero app. And when you're adding in a user in Xero just to be able to add in expense claims, the user type that you need to use is invoice only. And even if it's invoice only draft, the person adding in their expense claim has access to expense claims, and they have access to draft sales invoices, which means that if you had all these quotes, and these guys have millions of dollars of quotes sitting in unaccepted quotes, all of their staff members would be able to see those draft invoices. So you can't use that when you're using expense claims as well. That's something I wrote about in the upcoming issue 7 of Xero User Magazine. I wrote an article about all of the different types of users that people need to have, the financial controller, the sales rep that needs to enter in expense claims, the accounts payable person, what they need to do, and there was one other, I can't remember, but the article there takes you through what user role, the right user for the right role, because there's not a huge amount of ability for you to customize exactly what someone can and can't use. So that article takes you through some examples, so you can understand some examples, but also so you can understand how just know some things like what I just told you. If you didn't know that if you give someone expense claims access, they have access to draft invoices. You know that, then you're not going to tell your client to go use one or the other, given the access of the people that are there. So hopefully that was helpful to you. Speaking of issue 7, just quickly, if you guys don't know, you can get access to Xero User Magazine, which is a user magazine all about Xero for Xero users by Xero users, and I write a number of the tutorials in there, and obviously that's when the magazine is issued, but I'm now online every week with this Xero User Hour every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Sydney time. And you can get a free subscription to Xero User Magazine. So if you go to XU Magazine, which you can see on the page, of course you can read that article that I wrote about right user, right roles, and many of the other things that we have in XU Magazine. If you're heading to any of the XeroCon soon, you can also see us there, but get your free subscription, and you can get past subscriptions as well for free through the XU Magazine site. So it's not a paid subscription. It did used to be in the past, but it hasn't been for quite a while now. So if you've seen it and not known that, it's certainly free, and you can get access to that. And of course, Right User, Right Roles is coming up in the next issue, issue 7, which is out very soon. But you can see all of the other articles and things that have been featured in other magazines and get a digital version or a print version. Digital versions are available via a PDF. You can get that at any time through the website. All right, so finally, I just want to check if anybody has any questions. We've only got a few minutes left, so of course I'm happy to answer any questions. If you don't, then let me just remind you about how to get access to Xero User Hour from now on. So Xero User Hour is obviously issued here on live stream. If you can't make it all the time, you can still register for the events and follow us by selecting follow at the top of the live stream event here. If you follow us, then you will be notified of any events that are coming up, or if you follow us on Twitter as well, and if you subscribe to the magazine, then of course you'll be notified about different events that we have each time that we have them. The other thing that we'll be doing with this video as well, now that we have these live videos, is this session has been recorded and we'll be loading them up on YouTube. So if you missed the live session or part of the live session, you can of course watch it here on live stream, but that's only for the next 30 days or so. You'll find it here, but if you ever want to find it elsewhere, you can have a look on the on our YouTube channel, where you will find this link later on. So there we go. That is Xero User Hour for this week. I will hang around for any more questions in the chat if anybody has any until 2 p.m. I hope you learned a lot about Xero and enjoyed the session. You can, as you see on the screen, join us for Xero User Hour in Australia, 1 p.m. every Wednesday, or you can join us for the London version if that's more in your time zone, which is 1 p.m. every Wednesday in London. So we will see you very soon, hopefully for the next Xero User Hour. Thank you very much for everybody joining me. I hope to see you next Xero User Hour. Have a fantastic day. Bye.